Alright, so with this video we're going to go over the preparation of the glass rods for the 4-point bend test. And so let me just quickly go over the materials and stuff that we're going to need for this. So I've got my glass samples that I want to test. I've of course got some gloves. I've got some Scotch tape. I've got a set of calipers here. I've got a ruler with a groove down the middle, a Sharpie, and a little piece of paper here that has information about the samples and so forth. Alright, so let's get into what we need to do to prep for the 4-point bend test. So we have our glass samples, and we basically want to make sure that we always know the orientation of the glass rod when it's in the 4-point bend apparatus, so that we know where fracture occurs, whether it's on top or bottom, on the side, so forth, right? So one of the things we're going to do is we're going to make a mark, a Sharpie mark, down the length of the rod, and we're going to orientate that towards the top in our test. So we'll be able to arrange that so that we know where the top is in the test, and so when we look at it after it fractures, we can identify, I see that line, I know it's the top, I don't see the line, so it's on the bottom. We're also going to put a piece of tape on the top surface of the glass rod in order to keep things together after it fractures. So we'll show you that as well. And we also need to take the dimensions of the glass rod. So I'll stop the video here, start it back up, and we'll kind of go through each of those steps in order to get ready for the 4-point bend test. Alright, so let's start by measuring the dimensions of the glass rod. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to put this with the calipers, and I make sure we're at 0. So just close it completely and hit the 0 if we need to, but it looks good. And let's start by looking at the length. So we'll open this up quite a bit and take the length. All right, and as you can see there, it's 63.56. I'm going to go ahead and write that down. Sorry, 73.56, and that's in millimeters. All right. Now, let's close these back up and do the diameter. So from this, apologies, I dropped the glass. All right, let's do that again. All right, so from this, you can see that my glass rod, and I'm just trying to get a couple views of it, it looks like it's 4.78. So that's the diameter, 4.78. So I'll go ahead and write that down. All right, and so I'm going to keep track of which one this is. So make sure, if you do this, you'll want to make sure that I know that this is my sample number 1. So keep track of that. And what I did was, if I zoom back out here a little bit, I put that information on my sheet here. So that's sample number 1 now. Maybe you can't see that so well. There you go. Okay. So on my sheet here, that's sample number 1. I wrote the length and diameter down. So I've got that, and I want to make sure I keep track of this. So I know that that's my first sample that I'm testing. You can see the next field here is maximum load. This is going to be the quantity that you're going to fill in when you do the actual 4-point bend test. All right, so next what we're going to do is we're going to make that line across the length of the glass rod that we have here. So this is still sample 1. So I've got this ruler, if you can see here, it's got a little bit of a groove in the middle so it doesn't slide around. And so I'm actually going to use that to my advantage here And I'm going to use the Sharpie, and I'm going to basically use that ridge as a line. And I'm going to apply that line using that ruler and the ridge in there, and you can see that I've made a very straight red line. So this is what I'm going to use to orientate the glass vertically, right? So in the machine, I'm going to make sure that that line goes at the top. All right, so that is the next step. All right, so the last thing I want to do to prep this for 4-point bending is I'm going to apply that piece of tape so that in hopes of keeping it contained after it breaks. So you can see the tape here. I'm going to basically just take off the smallest piece I can kind of get. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the diameter of the tape to go along the length of the glass right here in the middle. And so I want to put it right on the top of the glass, and I want to do that roughly centered. So I have the piece of tape right here kind of centered along the length of the glass and centered on the line so that this piece of glass is on the top. What I don't want to do is I don't want the piece of glass to be so big that it goes around the bottom or the lower half of the glass. So I only want the tape on the top half of the circumference of the glass. So you can kind of see that that's what I have here. It doesn't reach around. So I don't want the glass to go all the way around this glass rod. And so again, when we talk about the way that the glass is going to fracture, all of that's going to happen at the bottom. So the tape can interfere with that, but if we only put it on the top, then it doesn't interfere with that. So we've got the tape here. This is going to hold the pieces together, hopefully, and we've got the line so that we know that goes on top. And we've taken our measurements, and so at this point, we are ready to test our glass rods using 4-point bend testing.